Good morning. We continue with our discussion on traditions in world cinema, and today we are going to focus on Chinese cinema, rather what is transnational Chinese cinema. You understand what is transnational? Happening across the nation. So, we are talking not just about Chinese cinema in China, but how it is leaving a kind of impact globally. Now, Chinese cinema is a force in world cinema, and that is in the era of globalization. That is what we are going to talk about. We are going to talk about the crossover and subtitle Chinese cinema, and as we know, transnational cinema is that which is subtitle, which is more which is made basically for globalized rather than local audiences. And then we will also talk about the pivotal moments or movements in Chinese transnational cinema, for example, Hong Kong action films, art house films, and also wuxia films. We will also talk about the major authors, the directors and actors of Chinese transnational cinema. A brief background on Chinese cinema. The early Chinese film industry thrived in Shanghai in the 1920s and 30s, first in the form of supernatural martial arts and then in left-wing realist melodramas dealing with social issues and patriotism. These two tendencies reflect different attitudes to the modern. The former was a magical, popular belief in science, the latter a rationalist belief in and political movements whose adherents saw the supernatural as a feudal quality, a feudal aspect. During the 1930s, the government banned the supernatural martial arts films along with dialect cinema, the cinema which was not in the national language. Now, this shifted these bans and certain political policies, they shifted martial arts and Cantonese cinema to Hong Kong. So, you have mainland China, you have Hong Kong island. So, we are talking about cinema in Hong Kong, and Shanghai during this period was occupied during the 1937 to 45 war of resistance against Japan. So, a second golden age developed in Shanghai after the war. The establishment of the People's Republic in 1949 was followed by the nationalization of the film industry. The government treated cinema as a vehicle of propaganda while controlling the industry. It also established new studios throughout the country and brought cinema to the masses. A shift from social realism to socialist realism resulted in increased thematic changes. Where pre-revolutionary films had raised issues without offering solutions, post-revolutionary films preferred heroes from the approved worker, farmer, soldier classes and happy endings in which the Communist Party aided their success. However, there were exceptions. Possibly the most famous post-revolutionary filmmaker Jia Jin his films includes films about sports heroines and opera in his repertoire. Few cinemas have impacted contemporary popular culture as deeply as the Hong Kong action film cinema. Since the 1970s, the genre has been a staple in cinema theatres, on television and on video. Martial arts stars such as Jackie Chan, all of us here I am sure are admirers of Jackie Chan, Bruce Lee, Jet Li, they are household names idolized by the masses, and the films are remade even in a number of Indian languages cinema with major stars. Now, one of the first films of this martial arts category was Enter the Dragon with the martial arts expert trio of John Saxon, Bruce Lee and Jim Kelly. The film was produced by Warner Brothers and it struck an immediate chord with the Indian film goers, also largely because of its entertainment value, spectacular action and of course, the famous Bruce Lee charisma. The plot is centered on the machinations of a cunning crime lord, Mr. Han, who stages annual martial arts tournament on an island. The film was dubbed in every possible regional language in India and spawned off several cinematic imitations. So, the proliferation of martial arts schools, t-shirts and posters bearing the figure of Bruce Lee played a major role for thousands of young men in India in learning what it means to be a man in contemporary society. Bruce Lee's brand of cinema influenced a generation of Indian film actors, and we have examples from all over. For example, we during the 70s and the early 80s, we had Mithun Chakravarti, who would often star in films that were like echoes of the Bruce Lee persona. Now, we will talk about more art house kind of films and Chinese cinema, especially the fact that we are talking about transnational globalized cinema in contemporary times. So, we have something called the fifth generation of cinema, and these of Chinese cinema, which came to global attention with Yellow Earth, which was made in 1984, and it was shot by someone called Zhang Yimou. Now, I am saying someone called because he started off as a cinematographer, but then went on to become a really renowned figure in world cinema. Zhang Yimou then moved into direction with something called Red Sorghum, which was released in 1987. The first post-graduation fifth generation film was 1 and 8, directed by Zhang Zhonzhou and also shot by Zhang Yimou. But when Yellow Earth screened at the 1985 Hong Kong International Film Festival, people sat up and took notice because it was so different from the films that had been coming out of the People's Republic of China before. So, while the 70s witnessed violence as manly, danger as exciting, and toughness as emotional self-control, with globalization and in the late 1960s, India also along with the rest of the world awakened to the films outside the genre of conventional kung fu from China. Again, I am talking about how Chinese cinema has crossed boundaries over the decades. So, one of the early films in this category was Ringo Lam's City on Fire, which in many ways started the trend of aesthetics in action. I am giving you a term which has been used by the great film scholar expert David Bordwell, who uses this term aesthetics in action. This movie City on Fire was remade as Quentin Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs, which is an international cult classic. City on Fire also inspired a Hindi film Kaante. The film had a stellar cast and it capitalized on the theme of honor among thieves, masculine pride and friendship among men. Now, some of the international Chinese stars or filmmakers that I am sure most of us are familiar with, they are Jet Li, Jackie Chan, and also we have art house actors such as Tony Leung and Maggie Chang. We have John Woo from China, who has become a truly global icon, and as well as Ang Lee, and more art house kind of directors Zhang Yimou and Wong KarWai. We will be referring to their films. Now, before I start, let me talk about wuxia. This is a genre in fiction, in Chinese fiction, and how it has become so popular in contemporary Chinese cinema also. Now, wuxia is a genre of traditional Chinese martial arts. Wu stands for martial arts and war and military, whereas xia is a type of protagonist found in wuxia fiction, a synonym for chivalry. The constraints of everyday reality nature do not apply in wuxia films. Warriors in wuxia films are able to fly through the air, run up walls, shoot balls of mystical energy. We have example of Zhang Yimou, who I just told you. He was the first, he belongs to the 5th generation of Chinese filmmakers trained in Beijing Film Academy and made his debut in 1987 with Red Sorghum, a critically acclaimed film. He also made several films which we are going to talk about, but most importantly and one of the most important and well loved film by Zhang Yimou was his 2002 Hero, starring Tony Leung, Maggie Cheung, Donnie Yen and of course Jet Li. It is one of the most successful indigenously produced Chinese films, and it was distributed by Tarantino in North America. It was marketed as Jet Li's Hero, obviously because Jet Li was one of the most well known figures, actors in this film. The style is wuxia. It is also historiography, which is retelling a certain aspect of Chinese history, but in a fictionalized way. The story is told in terms of color codings with cinematography by Christopher Doyle. And it also has a Rashomon kind of narrative structure where the story is told through several versions. We have the Jet Li who plays a character called Nameless, and his version where the director used psychological methods to discover weak points of the person who is his interlocutor. In Hero, martial arts genre transcends action and violence and moves into sheer poetry, ballet and philosophy, and makes a great use of symbolism and imagery. We will talk about Ang Lee, who was trained in the US film industry. He has successfully collaborated with American screenwriters such as James Shamos. With his diverse transnational filmography, Ang Lee has established himself as the most versatile and commercially successful filmmaker of the new Taiwanese cinematic filmmaker. Alongside Stan Lai and Tsai Ming-liang works, Lee's films can be categorized into a second wave of new Taiwanese cinema characterized by fluid identities and urban sensibilities. This is necessary for understanding Lee's exploration of personal identities such as sexuality, gender, generations within a transnational Chinese framework and within other cultural and historical contexts of displacement and social change. Since the international success of The Wedding Banquet, which was made in 1993, Lee's career has been characterized by different types of border crossing. Lee's career was launched by a trilogy of Taiwanese American family comedy dramas such as Pushing Hands, The Wedding Banquet and Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, one of his most cherished films. Subsequently, Lee directed 4 period films, literary adaptations from diverse cultural and historical settings, and you have to look at Ang Lee's versatility here. He adapted Jane Austen's England in Sense and Sensibility, the American Suburbia of 1970s in The Ice Storm, the American Civil War in Ride with the Devil in 98, and early 19th century China in Crouching Tiger and Hidden Dragon, which was such a massive international success, released in 1999. Lee also directed a gangster film, The Hire, Chosen in 2001, and the comic book adaptation Hulk in 2003, and later on he made his controversial western set in the 1970s, Brokeback Mountain, which is about homosexuality and gender identities in 2005, which was released in 2005. Now, Lee's versatility places him in the distinguished category of Asian directors alongside Zhang Yimou and Wong KarWai and also Takeshi Kitano. It is interesting to note how Lee has specialized in popular genres films, something that has won him audiences in Asia, North America and Europe. One of the key aspects of his works that fascinates, that you will all find extremely fascinating, is how a Taiwanese has moved in from telling family stories such as Eat, Drink, Man, Woman to the world of Jane Austen and to the world of the westerns, and he has been universally praised for his achievements and the way he has successfully established himself on the global forum. You consider Crouching Tiger and Hidden Dragon, and the wild action scenes, they lend a touch of an escapist fantasy and magic realism. I strongly recommend that you watch, if you haven't, Crouching Tiger and Hidden Dragon. And at the heart of the film is a coming of age tale. It is the girl's story. It is told through the perspective of a young girl on the verge of womanhood. And parallel stories are there, love stories, revenge, stories of a theme of betrayal, but at the heart it is a coming of age story, and perhaps that is what found resonance among the global audience. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is also noted for the way it tackles gender representation, where there is always masculine and feminine and vice versa. Coming back to Brokeback Mountain, Lee won the Academy Award for Best Direction, and which is, you know, a great acceptance of a foreigner in the mainstream cinema, mainstream global cinema. He also has directed very successfully Lust Caution, which won the Global Lion at Venice, and Taking Woodstock in 2009. His most recent success is, of course, Life of Pi, which is based on Jan Martel's 2001 novel. The film was, as you all know, was a critical and commercial success and won 11 Academy Awards, including Best Director for Lee. Lee's work illustrates the inevitable conflicts and negotiations between individuals bound by familial and societal obligations. Lee's films now consistently negotiate among cultures, nations, generations and genders, illustrating the repressive as well as revitalizing forces of Chinese traditions in the intersection of the residual past and emerging future. The next director that I would like to draw your attention to is Wong KarWai, who has famously made Days of Being Wild, Chungking Express, Ashes of Time, Happy Together, In the Mood for Love and My Blueberry Nights. Now, Chungking Express is one of his most beloved films, most cherished films of all. If this means anything to you, then Tarantino is a huge fan of Chungking Express, okay, but that is an aside. So, Chungking Express is an interrogation of cultural authenticity and critiques the Americanization of local conditions in contemporary Hong Kong. It operates as a study of masculine anguish and Hong Kong's post-colonial urban culture of movement, dislocation and transition. You have to watch the film and you have to watch its, you have to pay attention to its soundtrack, and you will understand how important this film is if you look at the movie as a postmodernist text in global times. Another important film of his is Fallen Angels in 1995, which is about love and desire. That must be the tagline. It is about love and unfulfilled desires. It was originally intended to be the third story in Chungking Express, but then he decided to make it into an independent film, and here the protagonist struggle with the notion of a dual identity, you know, Hong Kong, mainland China, Hong Kong versus mainland China. And the film, actually the characters aspire to create a more localized identity, and the mood is very distinctive, as in all Wong KarWai films. There is an atmosphere, a pastiche of colors and emotions. You have to know that Chinese cinema, contemporary cinema is known for its expressive colors, expressiveness of colors. Some of you would be interested. If you are interested in these things, mise-en-scène and colors and lights, then you need to watch Wong KarWai's films, also Zhang Yimou's films. So, Fallen Angels is a fractured tale, a fractured narrative of an unconsummated love between a professional killer and his female partner. It is very elusive, it has a very elliptic style, but that is the beauty of it. Roger Ebert, the late great film critic. He says that it will appeal to the kinds of people you see in the Japanese animation section of the video store with their sleeves cut off, so you can see their tattoos, and to those who subscribe to more than 3 film magazines, that is the intellectual types, the grunge types, and to members of garage bands and to art students. It is not for your average moviegoers. So, you know, it comes with a disclaimer that it is not for everyone, but nevertheless it is a highly enjoyable film if you are seriously into world cinema. We will talk about John Woo and his brand of heroic bloodshed. This is a term coined by British journalist Rick Baker, heroic bloodshed, and John Woo. He is known for his films such as Better Tomorrow, A Better Tomorrow, Hard Boiled, The Killer, and A Bullet in the Head. Also Hard Target, Face Off, Broken Arrow, and Am I Too, as well as Paycheck, his more recent and his Hollywood films. Woo's films are characterized by social chaos, apocalyptic feelings following the Tiananmen Square massacre and its consequences was for Hong Kong in 1997. Okay, so you have several spectacular action scenes in Woo's films. If you are the type, please watch John Woo's cinema, highly entertaining, less art house as compared to Wong KarWai. So, where does all this lead us to? So, Ang Lee and Zhang Yimou, they are more like exoticized filmmakers, but still doing extremely well with their brand of cinema. In the global scenario, you have John Woo, known for his heroic bloodshed, and of course, he is a very successful, very mainstream kind of a film director. He has made several blockbusters in Hollywood. Then you have Wong KarWai and Tsui Hark, more postmodernists. Their films are more hybrid and fragmented kinds of narratives. There is no single cinema that is national cinema, but Chinese cinema at this moment has several national cinemas. The sixth generation that took off in the 1970s, but it had an uphill task of distinguishing itself from the fifth generation in the aftermath of Tiananmen heights of censorship. Some gave up and went straight from the film academies into the mainstream industry, while others went underground. This means not submitting films for censorship prior to distribution and exhibitions inside China. This leads to low budget and dependence on income from overseas. After making the first film, a drama about difficulties of disabled children in China, which is Mama, for example, a filmmaker like Zhang Yuan went underground with Beijing Bastards, a film about the rock scenario, rock scene, rock music in Beijing. This was followed by the documentary about everyday life in Tiananmen Square called The Square, which was co-directed with Duan Jinchuan, and a feature about gay life in Beijing called East Palace, West Palace, which was made in 1996. The fifth generation favored exotic locales on the borders of the country. They focused on history and high style. In contrast, almost all the sixth generation films emphasize on urban youth, contemporary life, and naturalistic realism bordering on documentary, a mode many of them are dabbling in. However, the underground mode of production was not economically and politically viable. Since the millennium, the sixth generation have been attempting to join the mainstream, looking for investment and the domestic market. Some have found modest box office successes, but few have won critical success for their efforts so far. So, the eyes of critics today are on the newest filmmakers, who no one has designated as a generation yet. In China, there is a culture of calling filmmakers according to the generation. So far we do not have a generation, but Chinese cinema, something that is very well established, and Chinese filmmakers of the future are someone to watch out for. So, this is one more addition in our talk on traditions in global cinema or world cinema. We will continue this with more discussions on world cinema in our subsequent classes. Thank you very much.